is going on, folks? So I have been using the Edge 130 for a few months now, and I gotta tell you, this is one of those devices that really highlights where you don't necessarily need the kitchen sink. And I found myself using this guy a lot more than my Edge 1030. And I gotta tell you, they packed a lot of features in this tiny device for a small little price tag. It's so good at doing what it's supposed to do that you may not need all the features all the time. So I'm gonna ride a little bit more here, and we'll catch up here in just a little bit. So this is the Edge 130 from Garmin, and this is one of those devices that proves that sometimes bigger doesn't always mean better. And they packed a lot into this tiny little device. It's got a barometric altimeter, it's got Strava live segments, you can pair to all the external heart rate sensors, the speed and cadence sensors, and it does also pair to power meters. And then there's also that awesome extended display feature. And if you don't know about that, I have a video about it somewhere around here. But I'm gonna go ahead and finish out my ride, and I'll talk to you in just a little bit. So one of the reasons I really like the Edge 130 is that it's obviously extremely small, and for mountain biking, it's just nice and out of the way. So for stuff like this, if you have your Edge mounted to your handlebar, you can get your knee on it. The Edge 130 is so nice because it's just tucked away right on the stem, and with the fact that stems are getting shorter and shorter nowadays with longer top tubes on mountain bikes, it really makes a big difference. All right, so we are back at the house now, all showered up. So let's go ahead and talk about this little guy. So it's gonna have a 1.8-inch monochrome display, which is gonna be extremely readable in direct sunlight, and has a ton of contrast. So it comes in at just 30 grams, and it's gonna be IPX7 water resistant rated, and it has the standard rubberized door on the micro USB charging port in the back, and it also has nice rubber coated buttons, which makes it nice and easy to use. Now, unlike the 520 and 520 Plus, which have 7 buttons, the Edge 130 only has 5, and I actually have come to quite like the simpler button layout where the lap and start and stop key also double as the back and enter key, and this makes a lot of sense. But when you start up the device, you'll have your ride screen, and then below that you're going to have notifications, and then the weather, which shows your current temperature, the highs and lows for the day, shows your wind as well as humidity, and then if you press enter, it'll actually show quite a few hours ahead. I think it's about 9 to 10 hours ahead, actually. So having a simpler button layout, you'll actually press and hold the up key to access settings. So the first option in the main menu is going to be ride settings, and then in here you're going to be able to edit your data pages, and we'll take a look at that here in a second. But below that we're going to have alerts, we're going to have time, distance, heart rate, calories, nutrition, as well as hydration. And then below that we're going to have laps, auto pause, auto scroll, segment alerts, navigation prompts, and then you're going to have your GPS settings where you can turn it off, GPS, GPS plus GLONASS, or GPS plus Galileo. And then below the ride settings, we're going to have navigation, we're going to have courses, which it can do courses, segments, riding a previous activity, and then save locations. And then below navigation is going to be your ride history. So here it's going to show all your rides, all your activities, including the stuff that's going to be synced through Physio TrueUp. And we'll talk about that here in a second as well as your totals. So below your activity history is going to be your My Stats. And this is where I want to talk about Physio TrueUp a little bit. So Physio TrueUp is basically Garmin's way of syncing up activity data as well as performance data across multiple devices. And this seems to work sometimes it doesn't. Right now it actually is working. So the recovery advisor, it is showing correctly right there. And then the VO2 max is showing current as well. But below your VO2 max, you're going to have your personal records. It'll show your distance, fastest 40K, most descent, best power, all that kind of stuff. and then it's going to show your user profile right there. And then under My Stats, this is going to be where you can enable the extended display feature, and this will just be really easy that you can do with your Phoenix or Forerunner watches. Below that, we're going to have a very basic map settings. It's going to be user location as well as auto zoom. It doesn't have full-blown mapping, so that's not really much to speak of. And then we have external sensors. Now, you can pair this with both Ant Plus as well as Bluetooth smart sensors, but unfortunately, as you can see here, it does not necessarily allow you to rename the sensors. So if you go in here, we have the name right there. Can't really do anything with it. So unfortunately, what happens is that if you do have a lot of sensors, you may not be able to figure out which one's which unless you really remember the numbers or the namings. And it is compatible with Varia radar as well as Varia lights, but it's not going to be compatible with Varia vision. Now, like I said earlier, it does pair to power meters, and it can also calculate your VO2 max, as we just saw. But one little gotcha is that it does not have FTP like on higher end devices. But below sensors, we're going to have your phone options, and then this is where you can get assistance from some of your emergency contacts right here. You can actually just press send right there. And then we're going to have your status connection, whether you want to receive notifications, and then whether you want to pair a new phone. And then finally, below the phone, we're going to have your standard system settings like language, backlight, sounds, units, time, position, format, and then resetting the device, as well as the about page. Now, when you go to actually start a ride, all you do is actually just click start right here. You actually don't choose a ride profile like you do on a 520 or 520 Plus before you start riding. And this is another area where they went with a little bit simpler approach, and you'll actually choose your ride type after you're done. A little bit odd, but just a nuance with the 130. However, you can have up to 5 custom data pages on the device, and then what we'll see here is that there's actually 2 persistent pages. We're going to have a map as well as your elevation profile. But for your custom data pages, you can have everything from a pretty standard, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layout, single, 3, 2, and this is showing the Connect IQ apps that you can install at one time. But what I did discover is that you can only load 2 Connect IQ data fields at one time, but you can have up to 8 data fields on one page if you'd like. And then during an activity, you can edit your data page on the fly, which is pretty awesome. You can mark your location, or you can go back to the main menu. And like I said earlier, it does come with Strava Live segments, and here's what that's going to look like. So when you approach the segment, it'll give a little countdown to the distance to the start, and then when you cross the start, it'll say go. And then up top, it'll show the time behind or ahead of the KOM, and then below that will be your PR, and then it'll also show the distance and estimated time to the finish. And then it will also show your place in relation to the start, finish, as well as an elevation profile. And then in terms of the actual performance of the device, GPS acquisition was really quick, GPS tracks were really solid. I didn't have any sensor drops, but I did have an initial issue with autopause where it was a little bit slow to recognize, but a firmware update did fix that. And then battery life is claimed to be 15 hours, but I was getting more like 10 to 12 hours out of it, but I always did have an external sensor paired up to it, so keep that in mind. So after using it for the last few months, I've really quite enjoyed the simplicity of this device. It doesn't have full-blown mapping, nor does it have some of the more advanced training features like FTP, but they still pack so much into this little device for a small price tag. And the great thing about that small price tag is that you can spend less money on a head unit and then spend more money on some external sensors. Anyhow, that's it for the long-term review of the Edge 130. If this video did help you out at all, please hit that like button down below, and also subscribe to the channel for the long-term review of the Edge 520 Plus that's coming soon. And in the meantime, happy riding, and we will see you in the next video.